The northern wastelands of the Zon continent. A colossal red dragon, as large as a mountain, coils atop the cliff. Its wings block out the dim sun. Vertical pupils burn with contempt. On the ground, the holy fire dragon cores despair like ants. Hundreds of enchanted tower shields form a line. In the face of the scornful dragon breath about to erupt, they look thin and ridiculous. Commander Garen braces his shield tightly. His knuckles turn white. Plate armor warps under pressure. His face is stained with blood. The red dragon isn't in a hurry to breathe fire, but rather savors its prey's fear before death. It lets out a low, mocking growl. Pathetic humans. Your gods can't save you. With a roar, the dragon's breath pours down. All the knights close their eyes, awaiting death. A cracking sound comes from the heavens above. A pressure never before seen in this world descends instantly. The wind stops and embers freeze in midair. Even the red dragon chokes on its own breath, overwhelmed. It coughs out black smoke. A lead gray sky tears open like ripped cloth. Purple clouds churn like ink. Billions of golden lightning bolts tear through the sky. It's the heavenly tribulation. A desolate, majestic roar echoes from the rift. A gigantic shadow shrouded in thunder falls with an army of lightning. Garen's eyes widen. That's no dragon. No bloated belly or bat wings. Its body is sleek and long. Black scales hundreds of feet long glint coldly. Deer antlers and eagle claws. Its serpentine body is covered in brown fur flowing like black flames among the thunder.
His name is Morin.
A Jiao who survived for 3,000 years in the immortal realm. Only one lightning tribulation away from becoming a true dragon. At this moment he feels devastated inside. Ascension thunder tribulation. Why did space suddenly collapse? His internal spiritual energy is completely gone. His body is filled with a murky new energy. Even his protective magical treasures have all been shattered. It's like being tossed into a tumble dryer. He instinctively seeks a foothold. Golden vertical pupils instantly lock onto the ground below. That bewildered red dragon.
Taking advantage, he performs the divine dragon tail whip.
A colossal black dragon body lashes down like a whip, carrying residual thunder as it strikes.
Bang!
Pure physical power combined with the momentum of 7 tribulation-level monsters. The epic red dragon doesn't even get off a scream before it's reduced to a puddle. Along with the cliff, it collapses and shatters. Dead silence on the battlefield. Morin feels his demon energy quickly dissipating. Suppression brought by a change in the laws of the heavens. He recites a spell. His dragon body shrinks in the glow. A moment passes, and the dust settles. A young man stands atop the red dragon's corpse. Dressed in a dark robe, a jade belt at his waist. Long hair like ink. A golden dragon mark at his brow, faintly glowing. He frowns and waves away the sulfur-scented air. With a touch of obsessive cleanliness, his gaze sweeps over those in heavy armor, ordinary mortals wielding spears and swords. All these people have blocked meridians, their dansions empty. Just a bit of weak, chaotic aura. Where in the world is this? Morin decides to ask for directions first. Upholding karma and not harming others lightly, he tidies his robe. Hands folded together, performs a proper salute. Morin of the humble Dao, struck by tribulation, accidentally stumbled into your esteemed land. May I ask, where exactly is this place? And what manner of creature was that giant lizard? His voice chimes like precious jade. But to Garen and the knights, it's an ancient, unintelligible language they've never heard. Every syllable sounds like a spell. His prayer gesture, pressing hands together and pushing forward, clearly resembles a forbidden spell casting motion. Garen's pupils contract sharply. He's chanting, about to silence witnesses. He raises his broken sword and lets out a desperate roar. Everyone, charge! Morin watches below, as crowds suddenly surge toward him, pumped with adrenaline. He looks puzzled. What a fervent welcome ceremony in this wild land. In Garen's eyes, this black-haired man killed the red dragon in seconds, but shows no magical energy fluctuations. Either he's a commoner, Or his power is so great mortals cannot perceive it. Anyone standing atop a dragon or lion cannot possibly be a commoner. Thousands of knights launch a suicidal charge. Hoofs thunder across the ground. Spears rise like a forest. Battle energy sparkles. Wizard squads in the rear chant frantically. Fireballs. Ice spikes. Wind blades rain down from above. But from Morin's perspective, it's a different scene entirely. Too slow for a millennium-old Jiao, these movements are like slow-motion replays. So-called battle energy is merely crude manipulation of blood and energy. Fireballs and ice spikes are so basic, they don't even rival elementary spells. Such trifling tricks dare to show off before him. Morin is confused by their hostility, but his dignity will not be insulted. He doesn't move, just lets out a faint sigh. His right sleeve waves forward effortlessly. This move is called Flowing Cloud Sleeve. In the immortal realm, it's just a basic method for brushing off mosquitoes. But in this low magic world, what he releases is pure demon essence. A fierce wind whips up, as if summoning a hurricane. Fireballs and ice spikes fly toward the main fire domain, and are snuffed out and shattered instantly. The gale crashes into the charging knights. No blood or gore. The power gap is too vast. Instead, it feels oddly gentle. Hundreds of armored knights in the front row, horses and all, are lifted by an invisible hand and tossed hundreds of meters away. They end up hanging on dead trees or thrown into mud pits. Most are just knocked out. Morin only used a tenth of his power against mortals. Stop. A sharp feminine shout rings out. From a distant high ground, a blonde woman in a platinum mage robe raises her staff. Her face is covered with dust, but she radiates holy grace. Lux, Imperial saint and chief archmage, is burning her life force, channeling a forbidden spell. Meteor descends. The sky changes color. A meteor, dozens of meters in diameter, crashes down wreathed in flames. A strategic level spell powerful enough to destroy a city. Morin looks up, a trace of admiration in his eyes. This move somewhat resembles the mountain shifting technique. Crude, but impressive nonetheless. Seems this wild land isn't full of worthless people after all. But he doesn't want his robe getting dirty. Morin places his right hand behind his back and joins his index and middle fingers. He points at the meteor from afar. A flicker of deep blue light shines at his fingertip. It's his core technique, cultivated undersea for a millennium. A droplet of profound heavy water. The blue light expands in the wind, transforming into a giant water dragon. Its shadow roars, charging at the meteor. Assesses no explosion. The meteor dissolves like red-hot iron plunged into an icy pond. Extreme cold instantly destroys its structure. Flames extinguished. The meteor shatters piece by piece, turning into torrential rain, mixed with fine gravel. A scene that should have destroyed the world becomes a shower of muddy rain over the battlefield. The rain extinguishes the fires and snuffs out everyone's fighting spirit. Lux's staff snaps with a crack in her hands. She stands dumbfounded, staring at the sky. The ultimate forbidden spell was turned into rain by a single finger. This is not magic or divine power. Morin withdraws his finger, gazing at the muddy droplets raining down. Brows furrowed tightly. He hates filth the most. He waves his sleeve again. An invisible barrier opens up, extending 3 meters outward, spotlessly clean. His robe flutters like an immortal. After finishing all this, Morin looks at those hanging from the tree, and the mortals collapsed in the mud, kneeling and shaking. Even more confused. This group first brought a giant lizard for warm-up, then set off fireworks for entertainment. Finally, they all bowed together. In these wild lands, the local customs are surprisingly hospitable and pure. As a civilized cultivator, he couldn't be rude. He lightly taps the ground with his toes, floating down in front of Lux. Only the move he used earlier was worth watching. He must be the leader here.
Lux.
Watching as the black-haired man appeared before her in an instant. Her fear suffocated her. She wants to retreat but can't move. Morin tries his best to look friendly. He cupped his hands again to this fellow cultivator. That move just now was quite skillful. I'm new here. Our languages don't match. Mind stepping aside to talk? Lux heard a string of syllables like a magical incantation. She saw those golden vertical pupils of the flyer, the spotless black robe, and the faint water dragon shadow behind him. Her psychological defenses completely collapsed. This was the youngest genius mage of the Empire. Her eyes rolled back. She fell straight backward. She fainted from fright, leaving Morin with his hand awkwardly stuck in the air. He shook his head helplessly. Turns out the cultivators here are incredibly weak-willed. Forget it. He'd better find a local earth spirit to ask for directions. The battlefield fell into a strange standstill. The human coalition dared not move. The magical beasts dared not move either. Everyone watched him walk calmly across the battlefield. Morin was troubled. The language barrier was his biggest obstacle. He tried scanning some mortals' minds with his divine sense. He found their brain circuits were totally different from Easterners. If he forced soul-searching, it would only turn them into idiots. Since it's another world, there must be oddities. He closed his eyes. A mighty divine sense surged underground like a tide. This world has no spirit veins. Only crisscrossing earth veins and demon kings. Soon 3 kilometers deep. He sensed a dense aura of yin. A powerful soul flame pulsed there, surrounded by heaps of bones and treasures. He found it. Morin was delighted. Living underground. Managing the yin energy. It must be the local earth deity. But the yin here is somewhat mixed. Seems incense and offerings are hard to come by here. Right now, in the underground necropolis, the Lich King Karthus sat on his throne of bones, watching the surface battlefield through his crystal ball. When Morin instantly killed the red dragon, he was so scared he almost dropped his soul box. When Morin destroyed the meteorite with a finger, he commanded his skeleton servants to start packing to flee. Too terrifying. What kind of monster is that? Could it be the revival of the god of stalks? Though Karthus is undead, he values his life more than anyone.
He was about to activate the portal to the abyss plane.
A domineering, unruly divine sense broke through his magical barrier, locking directly onto his soul flame. Next, a grand voice exploded in his mind. A divine sense transmission. Spiritual communication directly. Ignoring the language barrier. Where is the earth energy? Come see me immediately. Karthus hadn't even screamed yet. An irresistible suction came from above. Morin on the surface didn't want to dig pits. It was too dirty, so he stomped with his right foot. The ground thundered and trembled violently. Under everyone's terrified gaze, the ground split open into a massive canyon. Morin reached out in the void. A giant golden hand formed by magical power reached underground, forcibly tore open the entire necropolis roof. Just like pulling up a turnip, he grabbed Karthus, who hadn't escaped yet, together with his throne of bones. Now, under the sunlight in a tattered black robe, hung with exploding stock market boxes, the Lich King floated in midair like that, exposed to thousands of gazes. This was once the undead. The scourged Lich King, Karthus. An old knight recognized this terrifying being. But now this terrifying figure from a century ago was trembling like a chick held by the neck, shivering in front of Morin. Morin sized up this creature, only skeletal, with blue flames in his eye sockets. He wrinkled his nose in disgust. He may be an earth deity, but this appearance is way too shabby. Are you a starving ghost who made it to enlightenment? Karthus didn't understand, but he felt suppression deep in his bloodline. He shakily raised his soul box, the source of his power and his most precious treasure, trying to use it to bargain for his life. Oh, mighty being, this is everything I own. When he begged for mercy through a mental pulse, Morin set his sights on the soul box. It radiated dense yin energy, crystal clear. Inside, it looked like liquid was flowing. To Morin, This was definitely not a soul box. Greeting someone by offering local specialties. A look of satisfaction flashed in Moreland's eyes. This item's yin energy is pure, smooth and round as a pill. Could this earth deity have refined the 9-turn soul pill? Looks like this world, despite being wild, the earth deity does understand proper etiquette. Cultivation circles value karma. Accepting a gift makes it easy to do business. Such courtesy from a fellow cultivator. I won't refuse then. He smiled slightly, reaching out to take the soul box, more important than the lich's life. Under Karthus's terrified gaze, his soul flame almost extinguished. Moreland opened his mouth. Just like eating candy, he tossed the soul box into his mouth. Crunch. The crisp chewing sound echoed across the whole scene. Everyone was petrified. The Lich King's jawbone dropped right to the ground. That was the soul box. The source of deadly curses, condensed from tens of thousands of vengeful souls. Something a dragon would rot its belly devouring. Moreland chewed twice. Slightly frowned. It was a bit hard. Kind of hurts the teeth with a lingering taste. A hint of sour decay flavor. The taste was ordinary, but that enormous soul energy instantly dissolved. Slightly replenished his dried-up magical power. Moreland nodded in satisfaction. Looking at the utterly stunned Lich King, he gently asked, I ate your offering. I am grateful for your kindness. Could you kindly point out where around here there's a bustling city? I need a place to rest and recover. He looked at Karthus expectantly, faced with the creature that swallowed his lifeblood, and even looked content with the taste. His soul completely collapsed. This monster is worse than demons. The Lich King let out a desperate shriek.
His soul box was destroyed.
Plus the massive mental stimulation. On this sunny afternoon, bang! He exploded into a pile of bone meal on the spot. Morin reached out to wave away the ashes in front of him, the smile on his face gradually solidifying. He looked at his empty palm, then at the humans around him who were kneeling with trembling legs, and let out a long sigh. This generation of fellow Taoists, why are they all so temperamental? I merely ate one of his candies. Is self-detonation really necessary? Communication failed. Morin turned around, his gaze falling on Lux in the distance, who had just woken from her faint, the blonde senses struggling to crawl back up. It seems I still have to find a human to civilize. He took one step forward, shrinking the earth to an inch, instantly appearing before Lux. This time he did not bow, but directly extended a finger, gently tapping it on the girl's smooth forehead. Little girl, don't faint. From now on, you shall be this seat's first registered disciple in this world. Let's start by learning to speak. The wind on the battlefield became cautious because of that man's presence. Morin stood with his hands behind his back, a wisp of sword intent he'd casually gathered floating by his side. Beneath his feet were thousands of soldiers from the Allied forces, who had just been saved from death only to fall into deeper fear. The Empire's senses. Lux lay limp by his side, not in his arms. Morin was a germaphobe, and he strictly followed the propriety between men and women. He used a gentle spiritual energy to support her, suspending her half a foot away from him, like carrying a human-shaped pendant. This girl has excellent skeletal structure. Though she has no spirit root, she possesses a pure spiritual mental power. Morin looked at the unconscious senses, calculating in his mind. He was a newcomer here, completely in the dark, and urgently needed a guide. That land deity who turned to ash couldn't be counted on. But fortunately, he left this survivor. He raised his head, his gaze sweeping across the knights kneeling on the ground. Commander Garen knelt in the mud, his entire set of armor trembling. He watched the senses being captured, filled with grief and indignation, yet he couldn't even move a single finger. That was an absolute suppression of life level. When a rabbit faces a tiger, the muscles instinctively lock up. Demon. Garen squeezed these words through his teeth, the corners of his eyes splitting. Morin couldn't understand him, but he understood the expression. That face was covered in tears and snot, prostrate in total submission. It seemed that the performance of summoning wind and rain, did indeed overawe these barbarian scenes. Words still needed to be said. He summoned a somersault cloud, the purple cloud beneath his feet carrying him and the senses slowly into the air. Fellow Taoists, the green mountains remain unchanged, and the clear waters flow forever. This humble Taoist is leaving, no need to see me off. His voice echoed through the wasteland like a great bell, and he then turned into a streak of light, flying toward the highest snow mountain in the northern border. Dragon Spine Snow Mountain, the red dragon's nest. Morin lowered his cloud, landing at the cave entrance. As soon as he landed, he covered his nose and mouth. Shattered bones and rotten meat were everywhere, along with gold coins and gems piled up haphazardly, the smell of sulfur mixed with excrement and the stench of corpses. Western dragons take pride in sleeping on piles of treasure, but in his eyes it was just a trash pile. They don't even know a simple dust-cleansing spell. He placed the unconscious senses on a large rock, drawing a circle around her, drawing a ground prison, to prevent her from wandering off and falling to her death. Then he began to renovate. A gale blew inside the cave. Tons of gold, gems, and armor were swept up by the wind, tossed out of the cave entrance like dumping trash, tumbling down the sheer cliff. The dragon's hundreds of years of savings, in his eyes, besides taking up space, were completely useless. He kept a few ores containing faint spiritual energy. Next, deodorizing. He formed hand seals, chanting true words, purify and lighten. Water light was generated out of thin air, turning into a fine rain, washing every inch of the rock walls clean. The 1,000-year sulfur and dragon musk smells vanished. Still not enough. Morin walked deep into the cave, his fingers like knives, carving like dragons and snakes on the rock walls. Amidst flying stone chips, a stone bed, table, and stools took shape. He then took out several low-grade spirit stones from his sleeve, placing them according to the 8 trigrams positions, and arranged a simple spirit gathering array. The spiritual energy in this world is chaotic. But under the filtering of the spirit gathering array, the air inside the cave finally became fresh and sharp. It carried a trace of the aura of an immortal's blessed land. After finishing all of this, he finally nodded in satisfaction. There was a noise behind him. Lux woke up. His head felt like it was splitting.
He struggled to sit up. His vision gradually cleared.
He remembered casting the forbidden spell. And then that black-haired man pointed a finger, turning the forbidden spell into rain. After a sharp, short scream, he clamped his hand over his mouth. His body curled up tightly. Not far in front of him, that man was standing with his back to him, studying a glowing stone. Upon hearing the scream, Morin turned around. He had already withdrawn his overwhelming demonic aura, now looking like an ordinary wealthy young master. But in Lux's magical perception, the man before him was nothing short of a humanoid black hole. Even the space around him seemed to twist slightly because of him. "You're awake," Morin spoke. Still that language he couldn't understand. Lux, trembling, spoke in the common tongue. "Demon, if you want my soul, just take it." Morin stared at him, his lips moving silently, brows furrowed. Sure enough, there was absolutely no way to communicate. He decided to take the most direct approach, to gently touch the surface of his memory with divine sense, and directly read the logic of his language, offending him. In a flash,
He appeared in front of Lux.
Lux's eyes blurred for a moment, and that stunning, almost demonic face was suddenly up close. A cold fingertip lightly touched between his brows. Boom! A vast spiritual force flooded his mind. Morin tried his hardest to control the intensity, but the immense gap between life levels from 2 worlds turned this contact into pure torture. From the perspective of his divine sense, Lux's mind was not an orderly sea of consciousness, but a chaotic spiritual maze, like a complex circuit board. His divine sense was like an ocean. When the ocean poured into the circuit board, it short-circuited. Lux's eyes rolled back. Blood oozed from his nose and ears at the same time. His brain was frantically warning him, his mind on the verge of collapse. Not good. Morin instantly withdrew his finger. How could this girl's soul structure be so bizarre? No purple mansion, no primordial spirit, just scattered and tangled thoughts everywhere. A slight touch could make it all fall apart.
He quickly took out a soul-stabilizing pill from his sleeve.
Forced Lux's mouth open and shoved it in. The pill melted instantly. A warm current protected his nearly collapsed spirit. Lux coughed violently, gasping for breath. Tears and snot covered his face. He stared at him in terror, like looking at the cruelest torturer. For that brief moment, he felt his soul being torn apart, then forcibly pieced back together. Morin looked at his miserable state, feeling guilty inside. Forget it, soul reading won't work. People from another world are just too fragile. Forcing language reading would only turn him into an idiot. Looks like only the most basic method will work. He turned and walked to the stone table, picked up a bright red fruit, a common fruit in this world, then walked back over to him. Lux stared at the red fruit, trembling all over. Is that poison? Or some kind of psychic controlling medium? Morin squatted down, trying to make their eyes level. He pointed at the fruit in his hand and pronounced clearly, apple. Lux was stunned. Morin thought he hadn't heard it, so pointed again, slowed down his speech, and repeated clearly, apple, then pointed to Lux's mouth, signaling for him to repeat. The air grew tense. He had once commanded armies of 10,000 at the Royal Academy, delivered countless speeches as the Empire's senses. But now, like a child, facing the man before him, the one who just destroyed half a night order, holding a piece of fruit, and teaching him to speak. What kind of new torture is this? Lux's mind went totally blank. He could only, in a shaky, sobbing voice, try to mimic the strange syllables. AP, apple. Morin frowned. Apple, apple. That's second tone. AP, right? Pleple. Apple, apple. At last, Morin showed a faint, satisfied smile. To Lux, that smile was more terrifying than a demon's grin. He nodded approvingly, casually putting the fruit in Lux's hands. Reward for you. Lux held the ordinary fruit and froze up, completely blank. Morin turned back to the stone bed, sat cross-legged and closed his eyes to meditate. A faint halo glowed from his body. Outside, the wind and snow roared. Inside the cave, an otherworldly god and a native senses began an absurd cohabitation like this. He looked down at the fruit in his hand, then at the sculpture-perfect man. An overwhelming sense of absurdity welled up inside. Who exactly is he? Why didn't he kill me? Why does he want to teach me such a strange word? Is this word a key to some spell? Apple, he muttered to himself. That day, this otherworldly word echoed for the first time across Song Continent. 3 days passed in a flash. Inside St. Peter's Cathedral, thousands of candles burned, but couldn't dispel the frustration in everyone's hearts. Pope Azir II held his staff, sitting on the throne with a dark look. The Empire's king, a cardinal, and Knight Commander Garen all knelt below. Garen was already half out of his mind, rambling about the events of that day.
He's not a dragon.
He's a humanoid demon. He crushed the forbidden spell with his bare hands. He devoured the Lich King's soul casket. He seized the senses. Enough. The Pope slammed down his staff. The sound rang through the great hall.
Take him away for meditation.
Garen was dragged away, still shouting, "That's not magic. That's a power more terrifying than the light god." The hall fell silent. A trembling cardinal finally spoke. "Your Majesty, the presence in the Dragonspine Mountains. The energy readings are beyond our understanding. The Star Watch Tower detected. The laws of elements in that region were forcibly distorted. Fire wouldn't burn. Wind stopped moving. That's heresy." The Pope's voice was cold. "The Senxes is our bridge to the gods. She must not fall into his hands. Since that being can kill a red dragon, he's a threat to the Empire. Even forbidden spells are useless. What can we do?" the king anxiously asked. The Pope stood up, a fanatical cruelty flashing in his eyes. "Human power is useless. Then let us ask the gods, activate the grand descent." Sacrifice all our magic crystals. Summon a greater angel, and let a true divine envoy judge his sins. Dragonspine Mountains. For the past few days, Mo Zong Mo Lin's life had been very productive, but also exhausting. Productive, because he had remodeled the cave into a proper cultivator's abode. A maze formation was set up at the cave entrance. The cave walls are covered with giant spirit runes. On the back mountain, a plant was discovered. It's known in this world as flame grass. He watered it with spirit spring water. It unexpectedly mutated into a low-level red flame spirit. He feels drained because that blonde girl is truly too clueless. 3 days in, she's learned less than 50 words. Eat, drink water, meditate, shut up. Those are the phrases she's best at. Especially shut up. Every time Morin finds him noisy, he utters those 2 words. Lux crouches in the corner. She struggles to draw Chinese characters on the ground with a twig. The Tao that can be spoken. She draws while crying. She feels like she's betrayed the god of light. She's learning the language of demons. And this language seems to possess some form of power. Whenever she chants those syllables, the mana inside her behaves strangely. It's more fluid but also harder to control. Morin sits cross-legged on the stone bed. He tries to refine the world's magic power.
He discovers
Magical elements are simply the residue after spiritual energy is broken down. If spirit energy is whole wheat bread, magical elements are breadcrumbs, even moldy ones. It's filthy breathing it in requires extraordinary effort to purify. He spits out a breath of turbid air in disgust. Just then, he suddenly opens his eyes wide. Golden vertical pupils shoot out 2 rays of cold light. Such loud bird calls. An arrogant and blatantly powerful aura is rapidly approaching from the south, radiant and blazing with light. But beneath this brightness, there lurks a scent he greatly despises. It feels just like those hypocritical gods and Buddhas of the immortal realm. Such a low-level fool has come to die. The desecrator's booming roar pierces the wind and snow, piercing right through the maze formation. It explodes above the dragon-spine snow mountain. Lux suddenly looks up, her eyes bursting with frantic joy. It's the archangel god has not abandoned me. She's so excited she tries to stand up. But Morin glances at her indifferently. She freezes instantly. Stay put. Watch the place. Morin tidies up his robes. Slowly rises. His movements unhurried. It's as if he's just shooing away a noisy bird outside the door. But the icy intent in his eyes is colder than the snowstorm. I've just settled in for a few days. And something with no sense comes knocking. Do they really think I'm a pushover? He steps forward. Morin is already at 10,000 meters above the snow mountain. Across from him floats a radiant being, standing over 3 meters tall. The face is so perfect it's not human, with 6 huge luminous wings spread behind him. He wields a holy sword burning with intense flames. Radiates divine brilliance all over. A projection clone of the 6-winged red angel Gabriel. The highest being standing in this world. A true miracle. Morin looks him up and down. He frowns. Human body with bird wings. A feathered demon cultivator. No, feathered ones in true human form always retract their wings. Your wings are exposed. Is your transformation incomplete or are you just showing off? He's puzzled. In the East, demon cultivators with incomplete transformations usually have low standing. But this one seems incredibly arrogant. The angel couldn't understand what he was saying, but felt the contempt in those eyes as if looking at a defective product. This deeply stung the proud angel. I am the sovereign of light. Sit and receive judgment. Angel, hand over the saint. Kneel and face death, and I shall grant you an intact corpse. The angel swung the holy sword, 100-meter-long holy light slash, striking down with the power to purify all things. This single strike even burned black fissures into space itself. Morin looked at that light, letting out a cold sneer. Light? You think you're worthy of wielding light? I'll show you what true righteousness and radiance look like, and what the true law of heaven and earth entails. He neither dodged nor evaded. raising his right hand high, palm facing the sky. The 7 demon primal souls of tribulation transcending stage, dormant for days, were activated at only 10% capacity. But combined with the law of lightning he had long mastered, it was enough to trigger a celestial phenomenon. 5 Thunder True Law. The divine firmament thunder roared. The clear sky darkened instantly. All light between heaven and earth was drained by this move. Then a bolt only as thick as a finger, yet composed of pure purple gold lightning, fell vertically from the highest heavens. It wasn't as imposing as the holy light slash, but the moment it appeared, the holy sword in the angel's hand let out a wail, its brilliance completely extinguished. The purple lightning struck first, shattering the attack. It cut through the holy light slash like a hot knife through butter, penetrating the angel's divine shield without resistance. With a soft squelch, the 6-winged angel froze. He looked down at the charred hole through his chest. There was no blood. Flesh and energy had been vaporized instantly by the high temperature. What power is this? The angel's eyes were filled with disbelief. Morin withdrew his hand, gently blowing on his fingertips. This is the Taoist law. A demon cultivator should act like one. Coming out to embarrass yourself before even mastering transformation? I shall help you cultivate anew. Though you can't understand me anyway. The angel's projection began to collapse, dissipating into countless motes of light. Inside the cathedral thousands of miles away, the Pope suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, slumping onto the divine throne. The radiance of the divine statue dimmed instantly, even developing a crack. Defeated. Truly defeated. His voice was filled with despair. Morin was in no hurry to return.
He looked at the spot where the angel had vanished.
A single feather remained there, emitting a soft white glow, containing extremely pure light attribute spiritual energy. He reached out with a beckoning motion, grabbing the feather in his hand. This bird feather is actually a good material for refining light shield talismans. He rubbed his chin, casting his gaze toward the south. That direction should be the church's stronghold. He wondered how many more of these birdmen there were. If he could catch a few more. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. That would make the entire Western divine realm tremble. Inside the cave, Lux watched the outside. The sky had suddenly darkened and then brightened again. That holy aura that had reassured her had completely vanished. She collapsed to the ground in despair. A moment later, Morin returned. He was in a good mood, fiddling with the glowing feather in his hand, while humming an unknown little tune.
He walked up to Lux,
casually taking the angel feather and sticking it into her messy blonde hair, like putting a hairpin on a pet. Not bad, quite unique. Morin nodded with satisfaction. Then his expression turned stern. What are you looking at? Have you finished your calligraphy practice for today? No dinner until you finish. Lux touched the feather on her head, which still carried the aura of an archangel. Tears wouldn't stop falling from her eyes. That is the divine plume of Lord Gabriel. The Empire's sacred relic was used as a hairpin by this demon. What are you crying for? Morin frowned. This is a reward. This bird feather contains spiritual energy. Wearing it will aid your cultivation. What an ungrateful girl. While crying, Lux used extremely clumsy Chinese to say the 5th word she had learned. Thank you. Morin arched an eyebrow. A teachable child. At the peak of the ultimate snow mountain, the wind and snow abruptly stopped. Morin stood at the edge of the cliff with his hands behind his back, fiddling with that angel feather. The feather spun between his fingertips, emitting a soft holy light, attempting to resist the demonic key on his body. This bird feather is somewhat interesting. He flicked his finger, and a wisp of samadhi true fire instantly enveloped the feather. The originally sacred and inviolable angel feather sizzled within the true fire. The violent, exclusive divine light was forcibly refined, turning into a globule of warm, jade-like white liquid energy. Though not a true phoenix feather, the law of light it contains is quite complete. Refining this into my robes can ward off all evils. Morin casually struck that globule of energy into his sleeve. On his pitch-black, wide-sleeved robe, A faint silver piping appeared. Having processed the spoils of war, he turned to scan the messy mountain peak. The dragon's lair had been partially destroyed by the aftershocks of the lightning strike, making it look even more dilapidated. I have cultivated for 3,000 years, and am about to join the celestial ranks. Though stranded in an alien world, a Taoist sanctuary is the foundation of one's existence. How can it be so simple and crude? He glanced at Lux, who was huddling in the corner, clutching her knees and shivering. He frowned slightly. Since I've taken a disciple, I must establish a sect. Word of this bear cave would make me a laughingstock. Morin was a man of action, and even more of a perfectionist. He gave a light shout, gently stamping his foot. The earth seemed to come alive. A dull rumble echoed from deep within the crust. Under the drive of his magic power, the hard granite became as soft as modeling clay. Broken rocks automatically gathered, fused, and reorganized. The originally sharp and rugged mountain peak was forcibly leveled by a section, forming a massive plaza 1,000 jang across. Morin waved his sleeve, and countless pieces of obsidian buried deep underground burst forth. Under the carving of invisible telekinesis, the obsidian was automatically cut, polished, and stacked. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a magnificent palace full of Eastern classical charm rose out of thin air, standing tall atop the snow mountain of this Western fantasy world. No spires or flying buttresses, number complex reliefs or stained glass, only black and white. Black walls, white ice jade railings, upturned eaves, and interlocking brackets. Above the main hall's entrance hung a dragon bloodstone plaque, with 3 characters inscribed, Azure Lotus Palace. Around the palace, he laid the Minor 5 Elements mystery array, making it appear and disappear amidst the swirling mist, like a celestial palace. Lux was stunned. She knew the limits of earth magic. Even an earth great mage, to build a castle of this scale, would need months and countless craftsmen. Yet the man before her had merely waved his sleeve and stamped his foot. Is this the kingdom of God? She murmured to herself. Her faith in the omniscience and omnipotence of the light god developed another crack. Morin stood with his hands behind his back, inspecting it with satisfaction. A masterpiece. It's barely livable. The materials are a bit crude. We'll catch a few Western griffins to guard the gate later. If we pluck their wings, they should be able to challenge the Killen. Just then, he sensed something with his divine sense. At the foot of the snowy mountain, a group of extremely weak presences were struggling to climb up. Halfway up the mountain, the wind was as sharp as blades. A barely remaining squad of 12 people trudged through waist-deep snow. They were the surviving knights of the dragon hunters. Leading them was Garen. After being blown away with a single sleeve that day, they hung unconscious in a tree for a full day and night. When they woke up, everyone urged Garen to flee back to the Empire. But he refused. The Senxes was captured to cover our retreat. I must go save her, even if it means dying. Garen, with 12 equally loyal knights who were ready to die, abandoned their heavy tower shields, bringing only broken swords, and crawled step by step toward the demon's lair. Garen stopped in his tracks. He stiffly raised his head. Through the snow and wind, he saw the mountaintop looked ghastly. The dragon nest was gone. In its place was a black temple floating among the clouds. On the plaza in front of the hall, that black-haired man was overlooking them from above. We've reached the demon's fortress. Garen's chapped lips moved. Are we really going to fight, Commander? A young knight asked, his voice breaking. Garen gave a bitter smile. Fight with what? Even angels and the awakened were killed. We'll negotiate. Trade my life for the Senxes. He used his last ounce of strength to crawl to the edge of the plaza. Just as he stepped onto the obsidian square, a warm current rushed over him. There was a barrier around the palace that blocked out all wind and snow. The sudden comfortable contrast from the bitter cold made the frozen knight's legs go weak. Sounds of thuds rang out one after another. 12 men, drained of energy and hit by the sudden temperature change, fell to their knees in unison. Garen was so emotional he wanted to speak, but couldn't catch his breath, and collapsed forward, his forehead slamming hard on the ground, making a dull thud. A perfect full prostration. Morin, standing on the steps, was about to rebuke these intruders, but was left stunned at the sight. This group was in tattered clothes, covered in blood. They'd climbed this snowy mountain from thousands of miles away, and without a word, paid their respects the instant they arrived. The leader's forehead was bleeding from kowtowing so hard, yet still trembling slightly. Such determination and sincerity gradually melted the coldness in Molin's eyes. In its place was a hint of admiration. The Tao shouldn't be passed on lightly. But even if these mortals are dull-witted, with poor natural talent, their pursuit of the truth moves heaven and earth. Knowing full well I have godlike power, they still risk death to come up the mountain, all for a slim chance at immortality. People in the cultivation world who seek the way this purely and desperately are already rare. Enough. Morin waved his sleeve. A soft spring breeze swept across the plaza. The knights, who were barely hanging on to life, suddenly felt a warm current pour into their bodies. Their near-collapsed bodies miraculously regained a hint of vitality. Garen was stunned, and looked up at the black-haired man slowly approaching. Morin walked up to Garen. His tone was softer than ever before. "Since you are so sincere," Morin walked up to Garen. "Since you are so sincere," one knight cried out in terror. "If I were to reject you again, it would seem too heartless. Though your innate talent is lacking," Garen got up as well. "But at first sight in Kinglian Palace, we just happen to need some servants for cleaning and chores." He reached out his hand, suppressing his obsessive cleanliness. The sect master was an Eastern dragon looking to retire, and gently patted Garen's blood-stained plate armor. He approved on the spot. "From this moment forward, you all are my first group of registered outer disciples." Garen couldn't understand a word. All he saw was the demon lord patting his shoulder, with an expression almost fatherly in its kindness. He wasn't going to kill him. Was he smiling because he wanted to fatten them up before eating them? Or was he planning to turn them into undead? Morin turned around. "First disciple, come over here," was forcing them to do these slow, soft, and gentle moves, making a sound like a quacking duck. "Take your junior brothers to the side hall and settle them in. Since you're hungry, from now on, let them handle the chores, carrying water, cooking, washing clothes. You focus on your studies with me." Lux looked at the kneeling Garen, and Garen looked back at him. Tears welled up in both their eyes. Garen thought the Sanxes was still alive, but she was now under the demon's control. Lux wondered, why doesn't Uncle Garen run away? Why give himself up to be enslaved? Just as they were about to break down crying together, Morin frowned and said, "Why are you crying? Being admitted to my immortal sect is a blessing earned over several lifetimes. Don't show any sentimental weakness. It's unseemly. Hold back your tears." Even though they couldn't understand the words, the strict aura was universal, forcing their tears back. And so the weirdest organization in Zon's history, his mind screaming inside, looked at the bubbling green liquid. Kinglian Palace was thus founded in total misunderstanding. The first disciple was a Western Sanxes, and the outer disciples were a group of temple knights, always believing themselves to be suffering in silence. Made Garen grimace in pain. Life at Kinglian Palace was both dull and absurd. The first rays of dawn shone on Morin, as he stood at the cliff's edge, breathing in and out the purple key right on schedule. Behind him, the plaza was bustling with Kinglian Palace's famous morning class. "Move slowly. Sink your breath to the danshin. How many times have I told you? Don't use brute force." Morin held a disciplined ruler in hand, always believing herself to be enduring hardship in secret, and smacked Garen on the butt with a loud whack. Even through the plate armor, the force packed with hidden energy, Garen and his 12 men had taken off most of their armor. Awkwardly imitating Morin's moves, they practiced Tai Chi. In this world where strength, speed, and violence are valued above all, and beckoned to Lux, who stood dumbfounded at the door, and a group of knights kneeling on meditation mats. Knight training was always about weightlifting, charging, and chopping at wooden stakes. You're not fit to be an inner disciple. Garen, balancing on one leg, shivered uncontrollably, but a gleamer came into his eyes. He was sure the demon was grinding down their willpower. But he dared not slack off. Would feel the ruler lash over like a venomous snake, the pain striking straight to the soul. Straighten your tongue. He felt helpless. He had wanted to teach his disciples the basics of cultivation. The roar of 100,000 troops shook the clouds. Only to find that the bodies of these Westerners, they had no danshin, only a core of battle energy, with half a serpent's head floating in it. No 12 meridian channels, only rough magic circuits. Making them practice Eastern arts was like putting gasoline into a diesel engine. They couldn't train their internal energy, so they would start with external arts. That's your own lucky fate. After morning lessons,
10 minutes later,
came an even more painful session. Lining up in their linen shirts. Inside the side hall for cultural lessons, holding his own handwritten 1,000-character classic with Lux. Their legs were already numb. Morin looked at this group. Repeat after me, heaven and earth, dark and yellow. Lux approached, trembling with fear. Total silence. This time, no one resisted anymore. Anyone caught slacking, Garen opened his mouth. Morin's brows knitted, as his ruler slammed the table, echoing loudly. It should be Tian say Tian. Everyone fell to the ground, rolling around. A holy knight commander, and even make them stronger? Who had slain countless monsters, was now reduced to babbling like an infant, learning these bizarre squiggles for letters. Lux was making better progress, being a mage, and smarter. He could barely understand a few common words by now. At this moment, he raised his hand cautiously, and in very broken Chinese said, Supreme One, I'm hungry. It was the longest sentence he'd learned. Morin pointed at the group of knights on the floor. Morin looked a little more pleased. Though the pronunciation was strange, at least he could express himself. Let's have meat today. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, collapsing onto the floor. The process was excruciating. Garen crawled over to Lux and whispered, Sanxes, Your Highness, how long are we going to endure this torture? That demon makes us do weird moves all day. But now this demon lord, is he preparing for a sacrificial ritual? Lux turned pale. No, Uncle Garen, those slow moves seem to contain some kind of pattern. Every time after finishing them, my body aches, but my magic flows more smoothly. What? Garen exclaimed. An indescribable smell drifted from the back hall. Everyone looked at each other. The stench was overpowering and made everyone want to sneeze. Morin came out carrying a giant bronze cauldron, purple flames burning underneath. It was his special marrow cleansing soup. As a responsible master, he really couldn't stand his disciples' poor health. He'd caught a few fire-type serpent monsters from the back mountain, pulled up some magic herbs, added 100-year-old stalactites dug up underground, and stewed it all together per a pill refining recipe. He may not have a proper marrow cleansing pill, but this soup was filled with the power of 5 elements herbs, enough to help you purge the impurities in your bodies and strengthen your muscles and bones. Morin set down the cauldron with a loud clang. We're completely incompatible. A metallic crash rang out. The greenish soup inside roiled. Everyone instantly fell silent, plus some unidentifiable medicinal roots. Their faces turning green too. His tone was softer than ever before.
he drank it all in one gulp.
Voodoo! This is a voodoo soup. He put in a flaming viper. That's a highly poisonous serpent. Morin served a bowl and handed it to Lux. First disciple, set an example. Lux stared at the still bubbling soup and at the open eyes of the dead snake inside. Then he looked up at Morin, those golden eyes that brooked no argument. He closed his eyes, Garen and the knights, tears streaming down his cheeks, and took the bowl with the resolve of facing death. Sanxes. The knights let out heart-wrenching screams. The broth went down their throats. Instead, a lava-like heat exploded in their stomachs. The world below the mountain was in an uproar. It surged wildly through their veins, flushing their limbs. Lux curled up on the ground in pain. His skin turned bright red instantly. White steam rose from his head. In Morin's eyes, it was impacting their meridians. In Garen's eyes, this was a sign of impending death from poison. Demon, I'll fight you to the death. Garen roared and charged at Morin. Morin didn't even look at him. With a casual gesture, he froze Garen in place. Don't worry, everyone gets their share. He waved his hand grandly. Dozens of streams of broth flew out of the cauldron. They poured precisely into each knight's wide-open mouth. That's the wrong sound. In an instant, agonized screams filled the hall, scratching at their throats and bodies. As the medicine took effect, black, greasy substances began seeping from their pores. He got up and headed toward the back hall. That was the toxins and old blood clots accumulated over the years. If you can sense ki from these 13 Tai Chi forms, it felt like their bones were being disassembled and reassembled. The screams gradually subsided. Lux was the first to get up. He looked at his hands in disbelief. His skin had become crystal clear. His previously frail body was now full of strength. What was even more shocking was, the bottleneck he'd had for 3 years suddenly loosened. The surrounding magical elements had never felt this welcoming. It was as if they'd come over with a mere beckon. He looked at Morin in shock. It's not poison, and stammered his thanks in clumsy Chinese. It's a miracle drug. He felt like he was 10 years younger. All his lingering old injuries were gone. Morin sat at the place of honor. The aura vortex in his body was twice as strong as before. Of stunned people, and pinched his nose in disgust. This stinks. Hurry to the back mountain and wash up. Before they could finish their discussion, no dinner if you don't get clean. They saw on each other's bodies, their faces twisted in pain. That thick layer of black grime and stench. Garen looked at Morin with a complicated expression. Garen shed tears of humiliation. Demon? What kind of demon would heal their prisoners? Could this person really be a hidden legend? Thank you, Master. Perform the grand 3 kneelings and 9 kowtow ceremony. Garen imitated Lux's gesture. Morin snorted coldly. Still a terrible accent. Copy Ode to the Goose 100 times tonight. While at the Kinglian sect, as the Mandarin campaign, there wasn't the deadly poison they'd anticipated. And fitness training were in full swing. The Holy Orlan Empire had allied with 3 neighboring kingdoms, as well as the continent's Mage Guild and Mercenary Guild, to form an unprecedented coalition army. Pope Azir II was still seriously wounded, but forced himself to stand atop the reviewing platform. That demon occupying the snowy mountain killed the angel. According to reliable intelligence, he is torturing them with extremely cruel methods, forcing them to drink poison for brainwashing, to turn them into puppets to destroy the world. We cannot sit by and do nothing. For the sake of the light, for the sake of justice, we must conquer Dragonspine Mountain. At the front, Morin demonstrated the breathing technique. Countless magic cannons were rolled out. Giant engineering beasts stood ready. A grand crusade against the Kinglian demon sect was about to begin. And on the snowy mountain, just after finishing their baths, wearing ill-fitting robes, copying goose, goose, goose under the moonlight with a bitter face, Garen, singing the lines about long necks craning to the sky, suddenly sneezed. Strange, why does my back feel cold? Is Master badmouthing me again? Morning at the Azure Lotus Palace still begins with the sound of cracking bones. In the plaza, Garen and 12 knights are taking their daily compulsory lesson. Standing meditation, nourished for days by the bone-washing decoction. Their bodies have undergone a dramatic transformation. Originally bulky muscles have shrunk, but their lines are now tight and smooth as steel cables. Their skin shines with a bronze glow, a sign of impurities expelled and fascia strengthened. What terrifies them most are the changes within their bodies. Garen maintains his stance, sweat pouring down like rain. He can clearly feel the golden battle energy he once prided himself on is being assimilated by a colder, thicker aura. Under Morin's guidance, their battle energy is transforming into true energy. Just the lowest level of acquired true energy, yet it means endless vitality and the ability to retract inner strength. Morin's cold voice rings out. Garen instinctively presses his palms down, exhales loudly. He doesn't stomp his foot forcefully, just sinks his breath. Yet the obsidian tile beneath his feet suddenly trembles, centered around his soul. Spiderweb-like cracks spread outward. No rubble flies off. The power completely penetrates the stone, shattering it into powder. Garen stares at his hands in terror. Morin appears behind him, still holding the dreaded ruler in his hand, though still clumsy. At least they've reached the threshold of mastering full power. You Westerners, thick-skinned and tough, are surprisingly suited for external and hardstyle martial arts. He casually tosses Garen a new booklet. These are the first 3 levels of the Golden Bell technique. That heavy iron armor you wear is useless. Master this, and you won't need it anymore. Garen shakily takes the booklet filled with Chinese characters. Filled with grief and indignation, he wants to strip knights of their glorious armor and have us block monsters with our flesh. But all he can do is bow and thank his master in humiliation. In a side hole, another worldview shattering lesson is underway. Lux kneels before the desk, holding a Volf hairbrush. To someone used to regular pens, this limp brush is pure nightmare. He's practicing calligraphy, with just one character, fire. Morin asks him to comprehend this word, the Tao meaning contained in its strokes and structure. In the cultivation world, words are carriers of law. Lux has stared at the character for 3 hours. His spiritual power unconsciously wanders along the strokes of the fire character. Hook, dot, and line. Gradually, in his spiritual world, the inked Chinese character begins to twist and burn. This is not ordinary fire, but the true fire drawn from the Li trigram. Lux instinctively pronounces the syllable in struggling Mandarin. Suddenly, the rice paper under his brush ignites. Not a normal flame, but a pure blue fire. The flame lacks temperature, but instantly reduces the paper to nothingness. Even the obsidian inkstone on the desk is burned through. Lux drops the brush in fright and falls to the ground. He stares in terror at the burned inkstone. As an archmage, he knows to conjure this intense flame would normally require complex spells and gestures. But just now he did nothing. Just wrote a word and spoke a sound. Words become law. Those 4 words explode in his mind. This isn't magic. It's a direct invocation of rules. He suddenly looks up, toward the door, at the black-haired figure scolding the knights, and his fear fades, replaced by a burning desire for knowledge. If he masters this language, does it mean mastering the world's essence? Ignoring decorum,
He rushes out of the side hall.
kneels before Morin, holding up the ruined inkstone, and blurts out, "Fire! I've learned the fire character." Morin looks down at the broken inkstone and frowns slightly. Such loud yelling. How improper. Though his eyes flash with surprise. Just 3 days of copying. He can already summon a trace of Li Fire's true meaning. This girl may lack spiritual roots, but her perception makes her a good candidate for cultivating blessing and fortune. He puts on a stern face. It's only burning a piece of paper. What's there to brag about? That's just your restless mind, unable to control your brush. Your punishment is to write water 1,000 times, to calm your fiery temper. Lux answers loudly, her voice full of newfound motivation. Just then, a desolate, deep horn echoes through the clouds, from the base of the snowy mountain. The sound is enormous, shaking the snow off the palace eaves. Garen's face goes pale. It's the Empire's war horn, the prelude to a legion charge. They're here? Morin irritably rubs his ear, walks to the cliff's edge, and gazes into the distance. The plains below the snowy mountain are packed, endless like a swarm of ants. Under the sunlight, spears and halberds stand like a forest, reflecting cold and sharp light. Huge engineered beasts pull siege towers forward. Hundreds of formations are neatly arranged. In the sky, groups of griffin knights block out the sun. Behind them shines the arcane glow of mage tower formations. The Holy Orlandian Empire has gathered the strength of the whole nation. 300,000 soldiers, the peak force of the mortal world. But to Morin, The scene revives ancient memories. This display reminds me of the past, when mobs of eastern sea creatures besieged the water palace. He turns to look at Garen and Lux, pale with fright. What, are you scared? Garen clenches his fist, gritting his teeth. Master, that's 300,000 troops, plus the Royal Mage Corps.
Even a true dragon
Would be crushed by this steel tide. You'd better leave. We'll hold them off here. Even forced to drink the bone-washing decoction and train the golden bell technique. Garen's knight spirit would never betray his lord, even if that lord is a demon. Morin pauses at the words, slightly surprised, then smiles. Not a cold smile, but truly warm like spring rain. He reaches out and gently taps Garen's hard skull. Silly disciple, let me teach you this. Cultivators' wars are never won by sheer numbers. Watch your master suppress a nation's fate alone. With that, Morin waves his sleeve, steps off the cliff, crossing the void, to face 300,000 alone. His solitary figure, like a banished immortal. At the foot of Dragonspine Mountain, the icy wind howls. The murderous aura of 300,000 soldiers gathers, pushing the storm and snow back for miles. In front of the central command tent, Duke Ryan, Grand Marshal of the army clad in legendary armor, gripped a massive sword, stared intently at the mountaintop, at that black palace. Beside him, the vice president of the Mage Association tightly held a crystal ball. That demon has emerged. The vice president gazed into the crystal ball. Only one person. No magical shield. No weapons. Duke Ryan sneered. The Vanguard Battalion tested an attack. The Rescue Legion provided aerial cover. The Mage Corps' mounted archery blanketed the battlefield. 5,000 heavy cavalry launched a charge. The ground trembled. Thousands of griffins howled down from the sky. Javelins rained down. The rear Mage Corps finished chanting. Hundreds of giant fireballs streaked across the sky, raining down on the tiny black figure in midair. This was a one-sided rout with no suspense. At least that's what the Imperial army thought. Morin floated halfway up the mountain, watching the tsunami-like assault coming his way. His brows furrowed. Too noisy, his carefully arranged giant spirit formation was getting dirty. What to do? The crimson flame lingi he just planted got damaged. What now? Since you insist on storming the gates, then let me show you what a shock really means. Morin took out 5 palm-sized command flags from his sleeve. He casually tossed them. The flags stretched in the wind, transforming into 5 streaks of light, shooting toward 5 directions on the battlefield. A strange buzzing echoed throughout heaven and earth. The once clear sky unexpectedly filled with fog. This wasn't ordinary mist, but illusionary fog spawned from the Great Soul Confusion Array with yin-yang inversion. The 5,000 cavalry at the front lines were about to reach Morin's feet. Their surroundings suddenly changed. Straight ahead, the mountainside became an endless abyss. The war horses screamed and braked abruptly in fear. Cavalry from the rear couldn't stop in time, crashing forcefully into those in front. Men and horses toppled everywhere, trampling countless griffins. In the knight's eyes, the sky turned into an overturned ocean. Countless ferocious sea monsters lunged out of the clouds. The griffins flew wildly, colliding with everything, dropping like dumplings. The Mage Corps suffered even more. The fireballs they cast turned back after entering the mist. Hundreds of fireballs, as if guided by invisible hands, changed direction, smashed precisely onto their own positions. Imperial army's formation plunged into chaos. Don't panic, it's just an illusion. Duke Ryan roared angrily. The Cleric Corps performed purification spells. Hundreds of white beams of purification light appeared, to no effect at all.
This mist
Is the yin evil energy drawn up by Morin's formation from the earth veins. Unless you sever the earth veins, there's simply no way to disperse it. Morin stood high in the sky, watching the 300,000-strong army below rampage like headless chickens. He shook his head. Boring, he didn't want to go on a killing spree. Slaughtering mortals damages one's virtue. So many corpses would be too much trouble to deal with. It would dirty the sacred ground. He needed to quiet them down. Morin took a deep breath, activated the demon core within his body. He didn't shout loudly. He simply uttered two words: silence. Those two words created no air vibration, but directly manifested as two golden mountains, their spectral images layered and dense, pressing down on everyone's hearts. Word becomes law. In an instant, whinnying horses, chanting mages, roaring duke, everyone's throat seemed gripped by an invisible hand. All sound was forcibly stripped away. The noisy, thunderous battlefield became utterly silent. Even magic artillery shells fell silent in midair, dropping to the ground. This is a prohibition at the law level. 300,000 people hold strange poses. Their mouths are wide open, but not a sound comes out. Morin nods with satisfaction. It's much quieter now. His figure slowly descends. He floats above the central command tent. He spots the one dressed in the most ornate attire. Duke Ryan, riding a nightmare beast, and the old mage trembling, clutching a staff. Catch the king first to catch the bandits. Morin reaches out and grabs at the air. A giant golden hand, formed entirely from primordial energy, suddenly appears out of nowhere. It grabs both men like chicks. They struggle desperately. Battle energy bursts forth. Magical shields fully activated. But before Morin's magic, they're like babies. While he's sawing, Morin lifts both trophies. He turns and flies toward the mountain. Before leaving, he looks back at the group lost in the mist, the 300,000 troops silenced by the spell. Can't let them idle around. He points with a finger. The formation shifts. The bewildering formation turns into a trapping array. All exits disappear. The surroundings become an endlessly looping labyrinth. The walls tell them to meditate. They must face the wall and reflect for 3 days. Grand Hall of Azure Lotus Palace. Duke Ryan and the Vice President are heavily thrown onto the floor. Their battle energy and magic are completely sealed. They're worse off than ordinary farmers. Above the hall, a black-haired man sits in a chair, holding a cup of tea. He sips it unhurriedly. Sanx's Lux stands respectfully by his side, holding a ruler. At the doorway, Knight Commander Garen wears servant clothes and is mopping the floor. Duke Ryan feels he's surely dreaming. Garen, you betrayed the Empire. Garen looks up. His expression is complicated. My Lord Duke, I didn't betray anyone. I'm just atoning and cultivating myself. Cultivating by mopping the floor for demons. The Duke's mustache trembles with anger. Morin places his teacup down to quiet the room. Duke Ryan immediately shuts up. That tangible pressure needs no words. Morin looks at his two new captives, a bit troubled. Why are people in this era noisier than ever? Language doesn't work. It's too troublesome. He had intended to just kill them or turn them into servants, but reconsidered. These two are dressed in luxury, clearly high-ranking in this world. Violence alone won't work. Order must be established. People here need to learn proper rules. And the first step to understanding rules is being able to comprehend speech. A grand plan emerges in Morin's mind. Back in the immortal realm, he'd heard stories about Confucian scholars enlightening the masses. If he could spread Chinese civilization in this wild world, make countless beings learn to speak Chinese, what an immense virtue that would be. Far greater than slaying a few dragons or saving a few people. With such merit, he'd have no fear of heavenly tribulations. Morin's eyes shine. He suddenly stands up, points at Duke Ryan and the Vice President lying on the floor, then points at his top disciple Lux. Transmit my decree.
He dips his tea and writes big characters on the table.
Gestures for the two to learn. Finally, he makes a throat-slitting gesture. The meaning is clear. Learn or die. Morin looks at these new students. His heart surges with pride. Not only will he found a sect on this snowy mountain, he will also make it this world's first Chinese school. Those 300,000 troops are the first batch of forced enrollments. From today on, the old continent will unify its characters. Morin solemnly proclaims in Chinese. Lesson 1 starts with Chinese phonetics. At the foot of Dragonspine Mountain, the battlefield once strewn with corpses now shows a bizarre scene. 300,000 Imperial elites, packed densely in a formation illusion outdoor classroom. Morin uses his magic to turn the sky into a giant blackboard. 3 golden characters, burning with life force essence, float up above. Morin sits cross-legged atop the colorful clouds 10,000 meters high. He lightly taps the air with his ruler. Thump. This sound is amplified through the formation and seems to thunder in the souls of 300,000 people. He opens his mouth, voice cold and authoritative. Absolute silence. In the very front of the formation, the royal mages clench their jaws tight. What they usually chant are high noble elvish and draconic languages. How could they utter single syllables like a baby's cry? Impatience flashes in Morin's eyes. I transmit the true voice of the Tao, yet you all ignore it. If that's the case, let me enlighten you. He presses down into the air. The atmosphere suddenly vibrates with high-frequency waves. A mage trying to cover his ears screams in agony. The sound doesn't enter through the ears. It's generated directly inside the brain. He forcibly controls the mage's vocal cords, tongue, and lung airflow. The mage's mouth opens wide. His throat erupts with a perfectly articulated shout. The instant that syllable leaves his lips, the mage, shocked, finds the magic vortex inside him, stagnant for years, fiercely resonating with the frequency of that syllable. Boom. Fire elements in the air surge into his body. His bottleneck at rank 6, shaken loose by just that shout. The mage's eyes widen. Humiliation freezes and turns to ecstasy. Morin isn't surprised by this. Chinese is a pictographic, expressive, and mystical language. Every sound aligns with the celestial Tao. The open-mouthed syllable corresponds to heart, element fire. Explosive yin essence gathers pure qi corresponding to spleen, element earth. Heavy yin dot and horizontal stroke correspond to liver, element wood. Growth. These barbarians don't understand 5 elements sound theory. They normally yell spells, wasting 90% of their energy. Morin corrects their pronunciation by force, actually reorganizing their internal energy circuits. Soon, the second, third, first 10,000 beneath Dragonspine Mountain, the sound of reading arises in waves. 300,000 people shout together. The sound wave scatters storm clouds for 100 miles. The earth trembles. Earth elements cheer. Tender sprouts rise from the ground. Howling wind. Wind elements swirl through the gaps in armor. Duke Ryan kneels at the Azure Lotus Palace entrance. Battle energy. Sealed, but he can still see the mountain scene below. Those once humiliated soldiers, after shouting strange syllables, their expressions become quite remarkable. Some are shocked, some are confused, some excitedly wave their hands and stomp their feet. Witchcraft, this is mass brainwashing. Ryan is despairing.
He clutches his hair. He's stripping us of our language.
And our culture. But Vice President Rise, practicing calligraphy at his side, stops writing.
He is recognized across the empire as the wisest elder.
Right now he's staring intensely at the mountain, at the energy cloud formed by the 300,000 reading aloud in unison. Red, yellow, and blue colors faintly form a pattern. Lord Duke, don't you feel it? Rise's voice quivers. Feel what? Resonance. The magical elements in the air are celebrating. They prefer this language. It's far simpler than our tedious, convoluted old god tongue. More direct, closer to the essence of the world. You're crazy, Rise. You're praising the language of demons. No, I'm praising the truth. Rise looks up at the giant Tao character above the main hall. A look of reverence appears in his eyes. If this language can bring us closer to the ultimate magic, then it's the language of the gods? Morin suddenly appears inside the main hall. He looks a bit tired, but his spirits are high. Teaching 300,000 people in one go really is exhausting. His first disciple, Lux, immediately brings over hot tea and respectfully offers it. Master, please have some tea. Now, he appears completely obedient. Just yesterday he used a self-created move to cast the Badgie lightning chain. His admiration for Morin has reached the heavens. Morin sips his tea. His gaze sweeps over Rain and Rise. Today's Pinion class was quite effective, though slow-witted. They certainly have loud voices. And plenty of energy. He pulls out a thick stack of papers from his sleeve. This is tomorrow's material. Rice, since you're a mage and literate, you'll be responsible for adding phonetic notes to this 3-character classic tonight. We'll hand it out tomorrow. Everyone gets one copy. Rice trembles as he takes the first page. Written boldly, when a child is born, their nature is good and similar. Habit leads them apart. He doesn't understand the meaning, but can sense the grandness in these 12 characters. Righteous moral principles. A form of education more profound than the spirit of contracts. Master, what? Is this scripture? Is it a manual for cultivating spiritual power? Rise blurts out this title subconsciously, with no hesitation at all. Morin smiles slightly. These are the principles of being human. Only by mastering them can one be called truly human. And not just a monkey wearing clothes. Rain watches in shock from the side. That once proud vice president now looks like a child who just got candy, clutching that stack of papers, hungrily reading.
He thinks the Empire is doomed.
The war hasn't even started yet, but the cultural defense has already collapsed completely. Morin suddenly remembers something and turns to Garen, who's mopping the floor, to explain tomorrow morning's lesson. Have all 300,000 soldiers take off their armor. How can they do radio calisthenics while wearing metal? Radio calisthenics? Garen's hand shakes as he holds the mop. What kind of advanced martial art is that? Morin thinks for a moment about the moves and nods. It's a supreme technique for fitness and prolonging life. If you master it, you'll be light as a swallow and incredibly strong. Garen swallows hard. He is already imagining 300,000 soldiers perfectly synchronized on the snowy plain, training in the mysterious Eastern War dance. When the sound of reading from Dragonspine Snow Mountain spread throughout Beijing, the Holy Orlandi Empire's capital was plunged into unprecedented divine terror. Inside the highest secret chamber of the palace, Pope Azir II kneels before the statue. He looks 10 years older. His wounds have not healed. But what makes him even more desperate is the silence of the deity. Ever since the angel projection was poked to death with a finger, the divine realm has cut off all contact. No matter how much he prays, the statue gives no response. He finally burns 50 years of his lifespan for a blood ritual. And the statue finally reacts slightly. A weak, static-filled and even panicked divine thought comes through in fragments. Run! That's a calamity star. Don't mess with the East. The voice cuts off abruptly. The divine statue's radiance has completely faded away. A crack has appeared on the surface, as if the deity, in severing its connection, was so terrified that it overdid it. The Pope collapsed to the ground. His mind went utterly blank. The god told us to run. This is the sound of faith crumbling. Who is that black-haired demon anyway? How did he make the almighty god of light so scared? He doesn't even dare mention his name. Meanwhile, inside the Lotus Palace Library at Dragonspine Snow Mountain, Morin is sitting among a pile of parchment scrolls. His expression is terrifyingly gloomy. He is reading the history of this world. He can't read the language. But after giving Rise a crash course in Chinese, he had Rise serve as translator, interpreting every ancient text word by word. Master, this passage records the creation epoch. Rise read respectfully. 3,000 years ago, the gods descended upon Zon. They expelled the chaos and established order. They taught humans magic and martial energy. Stop, Morin interrupted him. He pointed to an illustration in the book. The picture depicts the descent of the gods. A group wearing strange armor, some standing on flying swords, others riding gourds, descend from the heavens, slaughtering native monsters on the ground. The artwork is abstract, full of Western oil painting style. But Morin instantly recognized those so-called artifacts. The one depicted as the Hammer of Destruction is clearly the Quake Hammer from the Key Refining sect. The so-called Arc of Light is obviously the Cloud Piercer from the Heavenly Machinery Pavilion. And the leading god king is holding a soul banner. Absurd! Morin slapped the table. The obsidian tabletop instantly turned to dust. Frightened, they dropped to their knees. Master, please calm down. Did your disciple translate something wrong? Morin stood and paced the hall. Rage nearly erupted from his eyes. What gods and creation story? Clearly a bunch of evil cultivators who couldn't survive in the immortal realm, trying to escape to this weak spiritual world. Not only did they not enlighten the masses, but they sealed off the spiritual energy, siphoning the world's energy through those mage towers, retaining it all for their own use. The magic spells they gave you all are nothing but corrupted leftovers. Their purpose is to keep mortals from cultivating effectively, so as not to threaten their rule. Morin pointed at Rise. Look at what you've cultivated. Your mental power is chaotic. Your physical body is weaker than a chicken. You actually treat those evil cultivators who keep you like livestock as gods and worship them for 3 millennia. Rise was dumbstruck by the scolding. He didn't fully understand words like evil cultivator or Xylantown, but he grasped the main idea: the gods are fake. The gods are deceiving humanity. For a mage who chases truth his whole life, this hurts more than death. Master, our magic has been tampered with, Rise asked, trembling. Tampering, that's a shackle. Morin sneered coldly. The spells you chant not only fail to connect to the world, they even drain your life energy. No wonder mages here are explosive, but die so young. Rarely does anyone live past 200. The more Morin spoke, the angrier he got. What he hates most is sabotaging someone's path, ruining their foundation in such a vile way. These monsters were rats in the immortal realm, dared to call themselves gods once here, and still dared claim divinity. Since I am here, I'll deal with this now. He turned around. His cold glare made Rise's soul freeze. Rise, pass down my orders. Starting tomorrow, stop teaching any magic spells. All mages will switch to basic key invoking techniques. Also, tell those 300,000 soldiers to practice their pinion well, and stick with morning exercises. Once I've helped strengthen their bodies, I'll take them to slaughter the gods. Rise suddenly looked up. The term godless is absolutely forbidden in Zon, but from Morin's mouth, it sounded like he was just dealing with some poultry. What shocked him even more, deep down inside, he was suddenly filled with an unprecedented surge of passion. The desire suppressed for 1,000 years by mortals, to seek the truth and break their shackles.
Disciple obeys.
Rise kowtowed heavily. Outside Lotus Palace, night had deepened. Garen led a group of knights, studying under the moonlight beside a huge blackboard. Their pronunciation still carried a strong accent, but their determination was unprecedented. Garen noticed, with each repeated recitation of the syllables, the new energy within him was growing at an astonishing rate. He tried channeling it to his palm.
He lightly struck a rock before him.
No sign of martial energy glow, no loud sound. But when he moved his hand away, on the hard granite was a palm print 3 inches deep. Its edges were smooth as a mirror. Garen looked at his hand, silent for a long time. A knight next to him approached, excitedly whispered, I just recited that syllable, and it made my broken sword fly. It even curved through the air. Garen took a deep breath, looking toward the brightly lit palace at the mountaintop. In his mind, the image of that black-haired man had evolved from a demon to an unfathomable mentor, though the mentor was hot-tempered, quick to scold or beat them, and forced them to drink green mystery soup. He was truly teaching real skills. Cut the chatter. Garen scolded softly. Keep practicing. Whoever can't recite the first 4 lines of the 3-character classic tomorrow, no need for Master to handle it. I'll kick them down the mountain myself. Under the moonlight, the 300,000 troops initially came to wage war.
Now,
they have become the most diligent batch of overseas students on the snow mountain, and the coming storm that will sweep the continent, overturning everyone's understanding of culture, along with immortal cultivation reforms, is quietly beginning amidst the sound of reading. Deep autumn, Zon year 3024. Eternal City, Imperial capital of the Holy Oran Empire, has fallen into bizarre terror. On the city walls, tens of thousands of royal guards stand with swords, their expressions tense, staring north. Pope Azir II stands atop the city tower, holding a cracked scepter high, with thousands of priests behind him desperately draining their life force. Sustaining the holy canopy, a semi-transparent golden shield hangs over the Imperial city, claimed to be absolute defense, able to withstand repeated forbidden spell bombardments. What terrifies them isn't siege hammers, nor magitech cannons, It's the sound 1, 2, 3, 4, 22. The earth is trembling. There is no smoke-filled charge from the north. Instead, there are 30 formations, marching in terrifyingly perfect step, slowly advancing. These 300,000 soldiers are no longer armored knights, who used to clank noisy as they marched. They've shed all heavy armor, now wearing matching white training uniforms. Their skin bronze, muscles smooth and defined, breathing coordinated with their steps. Each step lands with a deep low thud on the ground. This isn't a march. This is cultivation, leading the columns. He is the former knight commander. Now Garen is the senior disciple of the Kinglian sect's outer gates.
He stands with his hands behind his back.
His steps are steady. Golden light flashes from his eyes as he opens and closes them. He gazes at the city he once swore to defend with his life. He looks at the thin layer of the sacred barrier. A disdainful, cold smile appears at the corner of his mouth. My master was right. Magic is too fanciful. Garen stops walking. Immediately, the army of 300,000 behind him freezes. Their actions are unified, as if they are one. On the ramparts, the Pope shouts in a trembling voice, calling out to Garen, "You traitor! Are you leading the army of demons to destroy your homeland? You will go to hell." Garen looks up, gathering energy in his danshin. His voice booms like a bell, piercing the sacred barrier. It explodes over the capital. Gregory, stop being stubborn. There is no such thing as divine magic. It is just your ignorance towards truth. We're not here to attack the city today. Garen pulls out an exam paper from his robe. He raises his right hand high. An edict from Morin, sect leader of Kinglian sect. Today, we are hosting the first interdimensional Mandarin proficiency test. Within the Imperial capital, anyone who passes the exam will be pardoned. Anyone who refuses the teachings, Garen's eyes turn cold. He swings his right hand down suddenly. Will be punished severely. As his gesture falls, 300,000 people open their mouths at once. They don't draw their swords. They don't chant any spells. They simply focus their ki, activating the true energy cultivated over the past month, directed at the so-called absolute defense of the sacred barrier. They shout the same syllable. The word po is spoken with the fourth tone. In Chinese phonology, the fourth tone dominates descending, cutting, and decisiveness. The essence and spirit of 300,000 people gather into this one character. A giant golden po character appears between heaven and earth. This character is not formed from magical elements. It is condensed from pure intention and rules, a carrier of higher dimensional laws. When the po character hits the sacred barrier, there is no explosion, no fire, only disintegration. The shield, built from countless complex runes, and sustained by the power of faith, when faced with this Chinese character, is like a complicated code encountering a formatting command. The runes become chaotic, twisted, and collapse. They can't comprehend the structure of this character. They can't parse its underlying rules. A crisp, shattering sound echoes through the clouds. The people of the capital are terrified. They look up at the light barrier that has protected them for centuries. It shatters like an eggshell, scattering light across the sky. Thousands of priests collapse atop the ramparts. The Pope's staff is completely destroyed. He slumps helplessly against the city wall. Words become law. This is the true divine revelation. The Pope murmurs in despair. The city gates slowly open. Not forced open, but opened by the city guards themselves. Because they heard the 4 syllables shouted next by the 300,000 troops. Surrender, resistance. These 4 words carry an odd calming power. The garrison notices. Their weapons suddenly feel too heavy to lift. And they can't summon a single thought of resistance. Garen waves his hand broadly. Enter the city and proceed as planned. First group, occupy the square. Post the pinyin alphabet chart. Second group, go to the Magic Academy and confiscate magic books. Issue dictionaries in their place. Third group, go to the church. Remove the divine statues. Replace with statues of the Lion Lord. Remember, do not disturb the citizens. No looting. Anyone who spits on the ground will have their leg broken. The most absurd scene in Zon's history is happening. The army enters the city. No burning, killing, or looting. One burly man after another sets up desks in streets and alleys. Don't be afraid, folks. Come, follow me. Pronounce these sounds. If you can't learn them, you can't eat tonight. Hey, mage, stop hiding. I'm talking to you. Throw that stick over here. Recite ancient poems from memory. Every mistake will be punished by copying it 100 times. There was no bloodshed in Huangdu, but everyone in Huangdu was stunned. Deepest part of the Imperial palace. Morin's figure appeared out of nowhere. He ignored the commotion outside. All those mundane matters. Let Garen and Lux deal with them.
His target
Was beneath this palace. That god's gate exuding a nauseating stench. Morin stood before a massive secret camp door. The door was covered with defensive formations. Enough to withstand a demigod's attack. Morin didn't even glance at it. He just lifted his foot. The door was kicked in like it was made of paper. Come out, so-called gods. Morin's aide stepped into the dark corridor. Let me see. Which sex outcast you are, daring to put on this act here. Passing through the corridor, his view suddenly opened up. It was an independent small world. A so-called divine realm. When Morin saw the full scope of the divine realm, the normally aloof and cold face revealed an indescribable expression for the first time. So this is the divine realm. A space barely 10 miles across. A glowing orb hung in the sky. A low-level artifact pretending to be the sun. Its light flickered constantly, like a faulty connection. The ground was paved with gold bricks, but exceedingly low in purity, mixed with a lot of brass. But the most ridiculous was the central palace. It attempted to mimic an oriental celestial palace, with flying eaves and intricate brackets, but looked extremely awkward. The pillars were not carved with dragons, but with winged serpents. The roof wasn't glazed tiles, but gold-painted slabs. The whole space reeked of mold, like a basement closed for centuries. Utterly tacky. Morin, disgusted, covered his nose with his sleeve. Even the turtle I kept years ago had better taste than this. How dare you, you insolent fool! You actually barged into the divine realm. An exasperated roar came from the fake palace. A flash of golden light. A figure appeared, wearing a flashing golden robe, a tall crown on his head, an elder holding a scepter, surrounded by rainbow halos, several light wheels floating behind him. This is the so-called god of light ruling the Zong continent. Real name, Li Ergu, regarded as the supreme existence by the world. But in Morin's eyes, Morin activated his heavenly eye. His golden vertical pupil narrowed slightly. Piercing through those flashy visual effects, he saw the truth. Ancient, 3,800 years old. Cultivation, peak core formation stage.
technique, incomplete flaming cloud sect fire skill.
He even practiced the wrong internal energy flow. On the verge of exhausting his lifespan, he survives by consuming mortal resentment. Morin couldn't help but laugh. For a moment, I thought you were some great reincarnated cultivator. Turns out you're just an old waste who hasn't even formed a nascent soul. The old man's face turned extremely ugly. But what terrified him even more was that Morin spoke in Chinese. It was the language of his homeland, the common tongue of the cultivation world. Which sect do you belong to? The old man dropped his godly pretense, switching to the terms of the cultivation world, his tone revealing his guilt. How did you find this place? This is a dead zone of spatial rifts. Even nascent soul experts might not find it. Morin sneered. He stepped closer to the spatial rift. This is what's called an about-to-collapse void dimension. The aura he'd been suppressing was released without restraint. Boom. The terrifying pressure of a tribulation phase great demon. Even injured and in human form, the level of life force was absolutely overwhelming. To a mere core formation cultivator, it felt like the sky was falling. The whole divine realm trembled violently. The fake sun went out instantly. The old man collapsed and knelt, protecting himself. His golden light shattered like foam. TR Tribulation phased Demon King. He was scared out of his wits. Back in the cultivation world, he was nothing but an outer disciple, having to suck up even to Foundation Establishment seniors. He'd never met such a legendary powerhouse. Senior, spare my life. Please spare me, Senior. He cowed out furiously. The brass floor echoed with his desperate knocks. Junior Li Ergu, miscellaneous labor disciple of the Eastern Wilderness Flaming Cloud sect. 3,000 years ago I stole a spirit chicken from an elder. Was hunted down and desperate, accidentally fell into a spatial storm, and ended up here. I've done no evil, just barely survived, trying to save up spirit stones to go home. Morin looked down on this so-called god of light. Saving up spirit stones to go home? Your so-called saving up means sealing off this world, building spiritual veins and religions, using mortals as livestock, feeding off their resentment. Because of your selfishness, this world's civilization was locked away for a full 3,000 years. The living beings here could have cultivated the great Tao, but were misled by your clumsy magic and turned into short-lived mortals. Li Ergu trembled violently, not daring to speak, and Morin pointed at the scepter in his hand. That thing's just a hoe used for loosening soil in the Flaming Cloud sect, isn't it? And you call that an artifact? Li Ergu blushed with embarrassment and tried to hide the scepter behind him. Senior, please understand. There's nothing here, so I just wanted to look a tiny bit dignified. Dignified? Morin snorted. What dignity do you have? Now that you've run into me, I'll act on behalf of heaven. Morin raised his hand. Lightning surged in his palm. Li Ergu saw this. Despair flashed in his eyes. Don't force me. He suddenly pulled out a pitch-black bag from his robe. A soul-capturing artifact stolen from his sect years ago. Whatever, I've got nothing to lose. Li Ergu opened the bag, and countless black wraiths howled forth. These wraiths were all over 3,000 years, the souls of Zon people who died from war and plague, collected and refined by him. They blotted out the sky, wailing as they swept toward Morin. Morin didn't even bat an eye. He was a flood dragon about to become a true dragon. A dragon is pure yang, ultimate power, naturally suppressing all evil. Morin opened his mouth and let out a true dragon's roar. Not a suppressed growl, but a sound wave exploding at full force in the closed space. With the dragon's roar, a giant black dragon phantom appeared behind him, with claws bared, scales and talons flying. The wraiths charging at him, the moment they heard the dragon's roar, were like snow meeting blazing sun, not even a single scream, and were instantly dispelled. Their resentment turned to pure, sharp points of light. The soul-capturing bag in Li Ergu's hand shattered with a bang. He himself was blown away, smashing into the fake palace. Half the palace collapsed. When the dust settled, Morin walked among the ruins, looking at the miserable Li Ergu. With that bit of skill, you can't even scratch me. Li Ergu had lost all hope. He knew, in front of this being, he was like an ant. Just kill me, he said weakly. Either way, I can't go back. This place is severely lacking in spiritual energy. I've been stuck at the Golden Core stage for 2,000 years. Staying alive is just suffering. Morin looked at his defeated expression. A thought crossed his mind. Killing him would be easy. But this old guy has been working here for 3,000 years. He knows the world's rules and ley lines and resources inside out. Besides, Morin had a bigger plan in mind. To build a stable teleportation array. He needs plenty of helpers to get home. Li Ergu may be mediocre in character and cultivation, but at least he's a legitimate cultivator. He knows a bit about arrays and key refining. Exactly the kind of person he can use. Morin put away his murderous intent. A meaningful smile appeared on his face. Dying is too easy for you. He reached out and grabbed, and directly extracted a wisp from Li Ergu's soul. Shaped it into a contract seal. Li Ergu looked at the golden contract. He knew signing it would make him a slave. But he had no other choice. I'll sign. The contract is established. Morin nodded in satisfaction. He casually tossed him a healing pill. Take it and don't die. From today on, you're no longer the so-called God of Light. He pointed directly at the ruined space. From now on, this is the Lotus Sex Storage Department. You are the first manager. Now tear down all the random buildings. All the spirit stones, ores, and treasures you've hoarded over the past 3,000 years. Sort and catalog everything. Lose a single spirit stone, and I'll rip out one tendon. Li Ergu held the pill, tears of gratitude streaming down his face. Thank you for your generous grace. Morin clasped his hands behind his back and turned away. He walked toward the exit. He stopped at the door, looked back at Li Ergu. Take off that military uniform. From now on, wear a gray robe. And change your name back. In this world, you can be called whatever you want. But in front of me, you'll only ever be Li Ergu, ruins of the Divine Kingdom. Now rename the Lotus Sect Ancestor and Branch Office. Morin sat upright on a pure gold chair, holding a jade slip in his hand, his brow furrowed deeply. Li Ergu was dressed in a dusty servant's outfit, kneeling on the floor massaging his legs, with a flattering look all over his face. So what you're saying is, Morin set down the jade slip, his tone icy cold. This world is not only abandoned, it's also sealed off? Li Ergu's hands trembled. May my master see clearly. This place is barren of spiritual force. There's a ridiculously thick wall of size outside. You can get in but can't get out. I once attacked it with faith power, almost broke my spine. Later, I researched ancient stone tablets, and only then did I find out. This was originally a dump where the immortal realm exiled abandoned things. Morin slowly stood up. He walked to the edge of the temple and looked up at the fake sky. No wonder the spiritual energy here is so murky. It's broken down into the so-called 4 basic elements: earth, fire, water, and wind. No wonder the souls of living things are so scattered. The whole ancestral incontinent is just one massive purification pond. Everything exiled here is leftover law fragments abandoned by the immortal realm. The wall of size. Morin sneered. It's just a variant of the primordial Vajra heaven-locking array. And you think that can trap me? He turned around, looked at Li Ergu. How many churches does your church have on the continent? Li Ergu's eyes darted quickly. Reporting to my lord, there are 300 medium-sized cathedrals, 3,000 small prayer halls, countless in total, spread across all human, elf, and dwarf territories. A golden glint flashed in Morin's eyes. Pass down the order. Effective immediately. Demolish all idols. Convert all churches into testing centers. Examination rooms. Li Ergu was stunned. Morin waved his hand dramatically, and a huge formation diagram appeared in the void. Extremely intricate. The Dragonspine Mountains is the core of the formation, with 3,000 churches as nodes, linked into a giant web covering the whole world. I will set up the myriad spirits heaven-mending grand array. This formation doesn't require spirit stones, but rather scholarly energy. This world is filled with too much turbid energy. Only by educating the masses, letting billions read the classics together, to inspire upright and righteous energy, can we neutralize the turbidness and break through the wall of size at once. Li Ergu listened with his jaw dropped, breaking the formation with the sound of reading. What are you still waiting for? Morin kicked him. Mobilize all your disciples and followers. Distribute the dictionaries to every village. 1 month later, there will be a unified exam across the continent. Those who fail will be put to work. A sweeping cultural revolution erupted in the continent of Zon. The churches that once spread the gospel now resound with the sound of reading aloud. In the elven forest, the elf queen, along with the elders, looked troubled before the blackboard hung on the tree of life. Why does this character have to be written so squarely? It doesn't fit with natural aesthetics. A disciple of the Kinglian sect supervising nearby said coldly, "Your Majesty the Queen, please mind your pronunciation. You must roll your tongue to get it right. No one is allowed to rest tonight." The elf queen gritted her teeth and rolled her tongue. In the dwarven mines, the dwarf king threw his hammer down and roared, "I'm a blacksmith. This brush is too soft and limp. How am I supposed to write with it?" Garen stood opposite him, holding a ruler, smiling. The dwarf king's master said, "Practicing calligraphy is training your heart. When you can carve flowers on tofu with this brush, your forging skills will finally break through. If you don't finish writing 1,000 characters today, this mine will go crazy." The dwarf king looked behind Garen and saw 300,000 burly men who had mastered iron body technique swallowing nervously.
He silently picked up the brush.
On the orc wastelands, the orc prophet led the beasts in intense study. They discovered these pronunciation drills were just like battle cries in their own way. Especially the Shaw sound. Every time they shouted it, they felt their blood boil. Now this is a real language. The orc warchief thumped his chest in excitement. The old Orcish tongue was too weak. This language is powerful. Time flew by on the continent in a mix of pain and enlightenment. The aura between heaven and earth changed. The once turbid and violent magical elements turned orderly as billions recited day and night. Even the Chinese language began to behave in order. A faint, invisible scholarly energy began to converge above the continent. Morin stood atop the Dragonspine Mountains, watching the flourishing scene, nodding in satisfaction. He turned to Lux next to him. This girl was now fully dressed as a Taoist nun, holding a dust whisk, with a completely refined air. The disciples have been notified. The final exam across the continent begins at noon tomorrow. Whether the cage is broken will be decided then. Lux accepted the order and left. The next day at noon, the midday sun shone directly atop Dragonspine Mountains. The whole continent fell completely silent. From the bustling yellow capital to remote fishing villages, from the deep underground to towering sky cities, every sentient being, regardless of race or status, was holding the very same book. Kinglian sect revised primary Chinese textbook. They held their breath, waiting for the signal. Atop the Dragonspine Mountains, Morin wore a full purple Taoist robe, stepped along the 7 stars, and held his ritual sword. He looked up at the invisible wall of size above. 3,000 years of seal. Today it will be broken. Morin took a deep breath, and his voice, through the formation, instantly spread to every corner of the world. His command sounded like thunder crashing down. Next, a monumental sound, gathered by billions, erupted across the skies above the continent. That was the very first poem every student must recite. It was also the one Morin chose. The breaking verse, heaven and earth, mysterious and vague, the universe, ancient and vast. Boom! With billions reciting those 8 words in unison, all the ley lines of the continent suddenly shook. Previously shapeless scholarly power became tangible white columns of light. From the 3,000 churches acting as nodes, they shot to the sky. 3,000 light pillars converged in the heavens, forming a colossal white pen countless miles long. The righteous pen fills the sun and moon. As the stars lined up, the sound of reading rose in waves. With every Chinese character spoken, the great pen became more solid, and the brilliance shined brighter. The once violent magical elements met this righteous energy and melted like snow meeting sunlight. They were obediently absorbed and transformed into ink for the great pen. Morin watched as the giant pen solidified, with golden light shooting from his eyes. He bit the tip of his tongue, spat a mouthful of blood essence onto his sword, pointed at the invisible barrier in the sky, and flicked his finger. "Break for me!" The righteous pen in the sky seemed gripped by an invisible hand, bearing the will of billions, and the mighty power of culture and refinement. It fiercely wrote a giant open character upon the heavens. A ripping sound echoed through the world. The wall of size that plagued Zon for 3,000 years, the blockade even the gods could never break, before this colossal character, became as fragile as paper. Everywhere the great pen touched, space shattered like a mirror. A massive rift split the sky above. Beyond the rift was no longer swirling chaos, but an intense rush of breathless, immortal spiritual energy. It's open, it's open. Li Ergu clung to the ground, feeling the familiar aura, his whole body trembling with tears. Finally, we can go home. But there was no joy on Morin's face, because on the other side of the rift, he saw no welcoming celebrants or celestial music. Instead, there was a massive, cold eye made entirely of pure law. That eye stared through the rift, gazing down indifferently, until it finally landed on Morin. A grand, imposing divine thought, devoid of emotion, descended directly into Morin's mind. Who in the lower realm dares break the boundary by force with scholarly energy? That divine thought, like a basin of cold water, extinguished Morin's joy instantly. He immediately suppressed his aura, bowed to the giant eye in the sky. Junior Morin, a demon cultivator of the lower realm, accidentally entered this lifeless land, and had no choice but to borrow the scholarly energy of the people to break the array. Just seeking to return to the immortal realm, no offense intended. The giant eye was silent for a moment, as if checking the records. Then a mocking voice came through. Morlin, that little loach from Donghai, who survived 3,000 years. Morlin's mouth twitched. As a little loach facing such an existence, he could only endure and behave humbly as a junior. Your luck. Is it good or bad? This is the No. 36 Cultural Enlightenment Test Field. The immortal realm has long wanted to unify culture across the heavens and worlds. But the laws of the Western domain are too rigid and difficult to enlighten. Every previous Enlightenment emissary has failed. Didn't expect you, the little loach, to stumble into success, using the most straightforward method to get things done. Morlin was overjoyed inside. So this junior has achieved great merit. Is it possible to ascend now? And join the ranks of immortals? Of course you can, but... The giant eye's demeanor shifted. This world has just been enlightened. Its foundation remains unstable. If you leave now, the newly formed literary spirit of billions would collapse instantly. Li Ergu absolutely can't keep the order. This place would return to a primitive land of fire-breathing mud players. That would be a major teaching accident. Morlin became anxious. Immortal Master, I'm just passing through. I'm not a professional educator. You're being modest, you did it? The continental-wide exam. Very creative. You even printed dictionaries. And you still call it unprofessional. Heaven is in need of talent. Since you've achieved results, we'll make an exception. Before the words finished, a golden scroll flew out from the crack, struck Morlin right on the forehead. Morlin is appointed as the Grand Libationer of Zon territory, granted 1 baptism in the Dragon Transformation Pool. Merit golden body to be received in installments. Task: remain in this realm to continue enlightenment until the first ascendant appears. Whenever someone gets admitted to the immortal realm, university, that's when you'll be transferred back, by Imperial decree. Morlin held the golden order in his hands, completely stunned. This is not what was promised. I want to ascend. I want to retire. The giant eye is slowly closing. The crack disappears with it, leaving only a faint echo. Do your best. Little more, I have high hopes for you. Remember to submit the final exam grades on time every year. The world returned to peace. The wall of size has disappeared entirely, replaced by a faint golden barrier. The wall of literary spirit, below the Dragonspine Mountains. 300,000 troops still gaze up at the sky. They watch the sky crack open. Golden light descended. Their mentor received the will of the gods, though they couldn't hear the conversation. From their perspective, this was deification. Their mentor became a god. Garen's eyes were filled with tears. He led everyone to kneel. Congratulations to our master for uniting the 2 realms. For generations to come, billions of people's cheers shook the snow mountains. Morlin turned around stiffly, looking at the masses of fanatical students below. Seeing Li Ergu's excited face, Lux's eyes filled with worship. Rise raising his practice problems, eager to try. He felt a deep sense of helplessness. This isn't godhood. It's clearly a life sentence. Everyone shut up, Morlin said weakly. He waved his hand and the cheers instantly ceased. He took a deep breath, staring at the heavy order in his hands, and at the locals below who, despite enlightenment, still looked utterly clueless. Since there's no escape, I'll just teach these idiots thoroughly. The sooner I produce an ascendant, the sooner I can retire. Morland's depression vanished from his eyes, replaced by a cold gleam. He flicked his sleeves sharply. His voice was cold. Why are you all so happy? Is the exam that difficult? Garen, your handwriting is all wrong characters. Go run 100 laps on the field. Lux, rewrite your essay. 10,000 words. And all of you, starting tomorrow, early morning classes will start earlier. Night classes will be extended. All breaks are cancelled. 3 years of entrance exams. 5 years of practice exams. If you can't finish, no food or sleep. Do you all understand?
Understood.
Their answer was a heart-wrenching roar from the whole continent. Painful yet happy, a unified shout. From then on, the Zon continent became the weirdest existence in all worlds. No wars. No magical conflicts. Just endless exams, and that legendary deist ancestor and supreme teacher, Merlin.
His main job every day was to sit in the Azure Lotus Palace,
Frantically grading the mountain of exam papers. This question. Pick C. How many times have I said odd changes, even unchanged? Check symbols for the quadrant. How do these idiots never remember? The roaring of the Dragonspine Mountains is still as resonant today, echoing above the world.